So here I'm addressing the question, how do you know which one is the query, which one is the subject? On question 2, I'm going to enter each of these guys on different boxes. It doesn't actually matter which one I enter. I'm just following the order so that it's easy for me to stay organized. So that I don't enter more confusion in here. All right, so I'm telling BLAST to compare those two and see what they have in common. Now I hit BLAST, and what we are going to do is on the result, we're going to look, okay, which strand was which that I entered. They changed our output. So it used to be that on this screen you'd already see everything, but now they made them into tabs. So click here on alignments, and now it's going to show you query subject. So now it's even more obvious to me why you didn't know, because you weren't presented with this screen. So you need to click on alignments, and you're going to have that. All right, now let me explain the pieces of this. All right, so this part here is showing you where they overlap. See how nucleotide number 22 of the query was an A, 23 was a G, blah, 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 blah. Nucleotide number 29 was a G. On the subject, nucleotide 1 was A, and the 8th nucleotide was G. Now, for you to figure out, okay, which one was the sequence 1, which one is sequence 2, what you would do is you copy this sequence. You don't do that all the time. This is only for this exercise for you to figure out what is meant by query and subject. So I'm copying that, and I'm going back to the exercise here, and then do a Control Find and Control V. All right, that. So let's go to exercise 2. See, this is from first nucleotide to the 8th, and this is more toward the end of the sequence. So if I go back to BLAST, the one that was from 1 to 8 is my subject. So your conclusion is that the sequence you enter in the top box is your query. The sequence you enter on the bottom box is your subject. And I know that because I entered sequence 1 on the top box and sequence 2 on the query. There's another type of BLAST that we're going to do later that you only enter one sequence. So you only enter the query. So that's your question. The question is, I have this one sequence. Which subjects does it match? But for now, I wanted you to learn this, that the sequence you enter on the top box is your query sequence. The sequence that you entered on the bottom is your subject sequence. This part here is showing to you where they overlap. Here's the nucleotide number of where they are in the sequence you entered. And later on another exercise, you're going to look at this, strand plus plus. But I'm going to anticipate to you already. Plus plus means they matched like this, and the BLAST didn't have to reverse complement the sequence. So if you have, let's go back to this. Let's say that your query, you gave this strand of DNA here, or maybe part of it. Then your subject, you gave this one. They're exactly the same sequence. So you obtained the sequence from the same piece of DNA, the same strand of DNA. But when we're sequencing DNA, normally we will get DNA sequence from one strand, and then a second sequence from the other strand. There are reasons why we do that, but basically, imagine that this is a rope you're trying to burn. The fastest way to burn it is to burn from both ends. And when I mean you put a fire here and a fire here, that would be the sequencing primer. We have to have some information from this end of it, some information from this end of it. So when we're sequencing a DNA fragment, we get a read from one strand and then I read from the other strand. And if you compare them directly, as in you would get A, G, whatever, and then you would get C, G, G. It doesn't seem like they're the same DNA sequence, but they actually are. They come from the same fragment. So in a future BLAST, you're going to see plus minus on the DNA strand. So over here, if it says plus minus, it means that you got DNA sequence from one strand, and then the other one, the DNA sequence came from the other strand. But when this other strand is reverse complemented, then they will overlap. So you're going to notice that in a future question.